Hello, hello! I'm Zilla. Welcome to my channel. This is my Ancient Gaming stream, where today we are playing part 5 of my playthrough of Stray Gods, a role-playing musical video game, which is about Greek gods coming to life in a modern-ish singer in a band and getting thrown into the middle of a murder mystery. So if you are new here, welcome. If you have been following along, thank you so much. If you do not want to be spoiled for the game and have not been following along, I do recommend that you check out my recordings of previous streams, which are all available on my YouTube channel. And if you'd like to just jump on in, that's also fine. I'll give you a little summary of where we are right now. So, we are playing Grace, who has been kind of lost after college. She's been singing in a band with her best friend Freddie and a couple of their friends who we have not seen since the beginning of game. And one night they're auditioning new members, and this woman Calliope comes in and sings a song with her, and Grace is like, "What just happened?" And Calliope is like, "We'll see each other again." And then she gets home and Calliope stumbles into her apartment and falls down basically dead, leaving her with Calliope's soul, I guess? It turns out that many of the Greek gods and other spirits are still alive, embodied in what they call idols, or eidolons. So eidolon being the word for an image or a representation, something that is fake or not the true form. And of course, idol being, as in pop idol, which I kind of love. Anyway, so they've been passing their spirits down through mortal bodies for this entire time, and Grace is now the muse Calliope, and she has to solve her own murder. Her memories haven't come back because there's something called the veil that prevents them from just overwhelming the person when they inherit. But Athena and the other gods sort of in charge have her as their prime suspect for who murdered Calliope because it was so unexpected. So she's got 1 week to figure out what really happened and come through it alive. And she has been, she's been flirted with by Pan, who is a bit of a rogue. She's been accosted by Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft, and the keeper of the library of the gods, the reliquary. She just attended Aphrodite's party, where Aphrodite, in serious PTSD, basically passes her idol on purpose every time the veil lifts all the way. So there's a lot going on, there are a lot of moving pieces, and we still need to track down a killer. We're jumping back into Act 2, where we are probably about to go find out what the deal is with Medusa. Before I do that, feel free to say hi in chat, and I am just checking to make sure that things have not frozen for you, because there has been a little bit of a problem with that in the past. So if it does freeze up, do let me know. And if there's any technical issue with the volume, with the video, please let me know right away so I can fix it. I am trying to watch, but there's only so much I can do while still playing the game. So, a couple of things that I've been thinking about this menu screen, which overall I adore. I love the feel of it. The neon laurel is just to die for. The posters, even the bird skull, it's just amazing. no notes. However, I was just talking to my partner before this, and he pointed out that they used a lambda for the A and a theta for the O, which I had somehow missed because I just assumed they were better than that. Yeah, I'm looking at you. No, I don't really like it when people use Greek letters as letters they are not in English. No. I feel like I'm being strangled by saying that. The other thing that I've been thinking about looking at this is, like, if you look on the new game poster, like, you know, there are these little, like, words that are not really words, just, like, scribbles at the bottom of the poster, some of them. Like, the new game one in particular. Like, I just keep looking at that, and my brain wants it to be writing, and it kind of almost looks like characters in either, like, I don't know, Amharic or Hebrew or something. Something where there's, like, a lot of arches. So, I don't know. It just amuses me. Anyway, let's get moving. Let's play a game. So our options post-party are talk to Medusa, talk to Persephone, or talk to Freddy. And I don't know about y'all, but I really want to find out what's going on with Medusa. It looks like so does Grace. So let's find out.
This must be the Viper's Nest. Scariest part of town, no sign. Just that one dude glaring at everyone. Well, I'm here now. Just another day in the life of an idol.
There you are. Man, this place is the worst. I think someone.
What is in her backpack? Oh my goodness, is that
What are
a
you doing
literal
here?
mace?
What,
It's
you
a
thought I
literal
wouldn't notice
mace.
you skulking off? You didn't even bring any equipment, Grace.
I kind of want to flirt, but I also want to be like, you have equipment? I need to ask about the mace.
What kind of equipment does one bring to a meeting with Medusa?
This isn't a meeting, Grace. You're not here to tell her on your business plan.
Please tell me you don't have any weapons in there.
Nothing that would get me stopped on the bus.
The mace wouldn't get you stopped on a
Need some
bus?
backup in there. Okay, do you even know anything about Medusa?
Well, let's find
Okay,
out.
I'll bite. What do you know about Medusa?
Well, you know she was human once, right? And she was cursed.
Apollo mentioned it, yeah.
Cursed by Athena. Or so one of the stories goes, anyway.
But
Yeah, one
doesn't
of the
she work
stories.
for Athena?
Hey, don't look at me. My knowledge of this stuff stops at a few thousand years ago.
I mean, they also say she was cursed by Poseidon after being raped by Poseidon, so...
She was once human, but she's definitely a monster, right?
Yeah, one of the worst. But, you know, so was the Minotaur.
Asterion said she was scary. I have a feeling she's not like him.
Then
Yeah,
I guess you need to be
kind of
prepared for the
expect her to be
possibility
a
that
bit
she is as
more,
bad as the legends say.
Pokey.
Though
more
some
like
of the stories
Persephone,
also
but
say
we'll
that
see.
she was wronged by Athena and that what was done to her was an injustice.
That's true.
And Athena just follows the rules, right? Do you think she actually turns people to stone?
Let's hope not, or this could be a short visit.
Or
Or a really, really long one.
I'm serious!
Perseus used a mirror to reflect Medusa's gaze back at her. Oh, maybe you could use your phone.
Okay, we do have phones.
You think that would
Wasn't
work?
sure.
Unless you brought a mirror, Grace, it's all you got.
Okay, enough talking. Time to do this.
You have a plan for how we're getting inside, I hope?
Maybe. You're here to help?
Always.
Then I have a plan.
Why is that guy's eye reflecting pink? I guess it's just the light. We could just confront him. That seems like a bad idea. Let's use a distraction. God, got some interesting options.
Hi, this is where the comic convention is, right? I hope I'm not too late for the
Wait.
signing.
Han, what are you doing here?
Ma'am, I'm afraid you had the wrong address.
What? No. Oh God, no. No, that can't be right. Do you understand the
She's such a
indignities that I
nerd.
have endured? The weird looks, the body odors. Someone spilled coffee all over my cosplay outfit. No, do not tell me that I got it
just
wrong.
keep them
I spent
busy while I
$50
look
on this
around.
ticket. I demand my personal photo.
I love Freddy so much. Interesting.
What a long day, hiding in the light. Such a long day, dreaming of tonight. This sacred bite. Hello, who's that there? You've messed up my flow. Just get your drink, girl, and take your seat. Oh, it's the muse. There are sacred bites, and then there's this sacred bite.
Singing.
So wrong, so right. I'm really gonna hate myself tonight.
Interesting.
Before you start the show, Pan said to say hello. That's what he said to say.
Well, any friend of Pan's is a friend of Pan's.
Okay. I hate to interrupt your flow. There's just some things I need to know. I wish there was another way.
Yes, you do. Now, look into me. Your body goes freely every time as it tenders, turning jelly as it renders. Can you say that once again? I missed it. You really want to sing, but your silly mouth won't do a thing. It's meant to work that way. I call it the preparation. Yes, I could make you stone, but then my dinner's blown. That's why I've got this other way. Look into me. Oh, she's looking away. Hey, look into
Medusa.
me.
Saw hunger with no end. You lost Medusa. Unless you find a friend.
What I should
Can be
look at me, but don't look at me.
Athena made you like this.
She was mad at me, so
Well, why was she mad?
she said I'd been bad.
Had you been?
No. Now look into me.
Some people respond.
Listen, Medusa.
to trauma.
She hides you in shame, but she uses you all the same. You could live another If I was treated like you, I'd be a monster too.
That's kind to say, but you could never be a creature like me. You didn't kill
Calliope. So you know that it's true that I didn't do it.
No.
Yes, you do know. You know, does that mean Athena knows?
No. Okay. It's dinner time. You're not gonna watch? Fine grace, I'll taste.
Just like fate made you, fate played me. Just like
I won't see what your eyes see when you look at me. Don't look at me. You think that will hurt me, child? You have not done your homework.
Oh, sorry, just trying to get your attention. Yeah, I've been watching, and I'm willing to bet you can't turn me to stone before I burn your snakes off.
Freddy is the best.
You stand down, Freddy. Let's give Medusa some space.
Yeah, okay. I'm watching her, though.
You ready to talk?
Oh, fine.
I
Fine.
wonder how Freddy got
What
it.
exactly is it that you want, pretty muse?
You were at the reliquary the night Calliope was murdered. I want to know why.
Blast! This is why I didn't tell Lady Athena. I knew it would come back to haunt me. I only followed pretty Calliope to the reliquary. I never spoke to her, never even caught up to her. I swear it.
That's what Asterion told us, more or less.
But you were there that night.
Yes, I admit it. Ugh, Lady Athena will have my head. She'll mount it on a pike. Whatever you might think of me, I had no part in the Muse's death. I did not even know she'd been attacked until I saw her fleeing.
You followed Calliope to the reliquary. Why were you shadowing her at all?
I am Lady Athena's spy master, yes. Calliope has been trouble from time to time.
So you were spying on her.
I keep watch over every idol who no longer lives in Olympus, but especially Calliope. When I realized she was headed to the reliquary that eve, I followed. I had a duty to Athena.
So, just to talk about Medusa's iconography for a minute, it's really interesting that they've shaped her as a snake in her face as well as her locks. That's very fitting for how she's often depicted, how Gorgons are often depicted, with large fangs and their tongue kind of sticking out. It's an intimidation thing. Gorgon heads were considered apotropaic, which is to say that they scare people away and turn away bad luck when they're carved on things. So you'll often see grave stellae or shields with Gorgon faces on them to turn away looters, to turn away arrows, to turn away evil spirits, that kind of thing. So in this version, she's very definitely been abused by Athena. She's clearly traumatized, and she keeps finding, I'm sure, idols who feel similarly, who feel like they have been the victim, they've been told all their lives that they're monsters, and so they've become what they hear. If you're gonna tell me I'm bad, I might as well live up to it. If I'm gonna take the punishment either way, I might as well enjoy it, do something with it, grab that power and run. Because there is a power in being hated, in being feared. It's just not a good or healthy one. And you could see how hurt Medusa was in that song, where they had all this iconography of mirrors shattering, of don't look at me, don't see me, see the monster, see the apotropaic face. So I'm not surprised. It is very interesting. The diversity in the gods' idols is really, I think, quite impressive. Like, we have a lot of figures who are black or who are, disabled in some way, or who are distinctly non-white ethnicities without being very specific. Though I would say that Aphrodite is probably Arab, or was, I should say. Clearly her new incarnation is Black American. But I didn't expect to see essentially a Naga as Medusa. The Naga are a South Asian myth. You find them in Indian and other South Asian cultures. Indian is such a broad category, especially the further back in time you go. But they're snake people, often snake women. They do have sometimes a seductive quality to them. Like I said, in Greek mythology, snakes are much more associated with healing. So it's always struck me as interesting that snake-headed people are evil, as it were, are monsters. And I think they're kind of playing with that here. But I also notice that Medusa is dressed specifically in a dancing sari and making Indian dance moves. One of her main frames is very clearly in a dance pose, even when she's talking. And it's somewhere between, between a traditional Indian dance and a strip club dance, but with her prey at the center. Apparently she does eat people. I wonder if she has to.
Did you ever find out why Calliope went there?
I was never close enough to ask. When I drew near to the reliquary, that is when I saw the muse fleeing.
See that dance?
She was frightened, bloodied, dying.
Let me guess, that made you hungry.
I gave chase, yes, but to discover the truth. I knew Lady Athena would wish to know.
That does make sense from your perspective.
I didn't learn the truth until later. And then it was far too late.
The truth.
Asterion said he caught up with you out in the fog. Is that right?
I thought
Asterion,
he
for
was the
those
one who had attacked her.
remembering, is our
He
Minotaur
is
friend.
a great beast of a creature.
He killed Hecate's cat by accident, but this still seems hard to believe.
Yes, I had only realized my mistake once I caught up to him, and by then the muse was gone.
And you never found her afterwards?
I thought she might flee to her pretty home, or to the sharp and prickly Persephone. She did neither.
Yeah, she came to see me. You haven't told Athena any of this?
Do I need to light things up again? 'Cause I'll do it.
Freddie.
I told her Calliope was at the reliquary that night. I did not tell her I was also there.
Why not? Wouldn't Athena find out from Hecate anyway?
No, I was not thinking clearly. I panicked.
That doesn't have the ring of
Lady
truth to
Athena
it.
barely tolerates my presence as it is. If she thought I was involved in any way, if she even suspected.
Why should we believe you? You did just try to eat me, remember?
This is not a very nice
I
reaction.
am telling you the truth.
Right, and not at all trying to cover your own ass.
You presented an opportunity. Oh, to taste the sweet, sweet blood of a hero once again.
That I believe.
It's a problem. I've been working on it, I really have.
Uh-huh.
Well, what of Pan? The only reason I knew Calliope was going to the reliquary is because he informed me.
Yeah, not surprised.
So much for never lying to me.
What were the odds, honestly?
Let's put a pin in that for the moment, shall we?
I am a monster. It's true, I do not deny it. It's still, I did not kill the muse.
No, I want to know who she
Okay,
thinks did.
let's say we believe you. For the moment.
Whatever you do, pretty muse, I beg you. Do not tell Athena of my indiscretion. Show mercy. I know what I am horrifies you. It horrifies me as well. I cannot help what I am. I did not ask to be cursed like this.
I wish I could ask the clever question, but
Indiscretion, huh? It's quite the word for it.
I cannot apologize for my hunger. I can only apologize that I am so very weak in the face of
that is actually
I'll
true.
think about it.
I am a lost and cursed thing. No idol. If Lady Athena should learn the truth, I hope you find what you seek, pretty muse. And that we meet again someday. And sing a different song.
He knew. Right from the start, Pan knew Calliope was there that night.
Yeah, and who could have foreseen that he was lying to you the
Freddie
entire
hates
time?
Pan.
Who? I asked
I
you.
was
A
playing with
mystery
some friends
even
the
the
other
Oracle
day,
couldn't have
and,
penetrated.
they also both had like a strong negative reaction to Pan, which I thought was funny. I don't think that Pan is. I think Pan always has 15 things going, but I don't think one of them is not trying to help me. I think he actually wants us to figure out what happened, and just doesn't think he can be seen helping, which, from everybody's reaction, is pretty reasonable.
It just doesn't make sense. Pan sent me to the reliquary. If he's involved, why would he do that?
I don't know. Guilt, maybe? Anyhow, you probably have a few questions for Mr. Goatman. I'll see you at home.
Now we can.
Would you really have tried to burn Medusa's face off? With an aerosol can?
Hey, she also brought a
Hell
mace.
yeah, one hint of googly eyes and...
What would I do without you?
I really think like a
You'll never need to
spray
answer that
mace
question.
might have been more applicable. I love that she just has a mace. She's like, Freddie's so great. She's just like into D&D. She knows all about Greek mythology. Just, what a badass.
Oh,
I need a Freddie hat.
if it isn't, the lovely Grace?
You knew. Right from the start, you knew Calliope was there that night.
Well, yes. She asked for the key and I gave it to her, no questions asked. I told you I didn't know what happened to Calliope, and that's the truth. I did not. So I nudged you in the right direction.
So you were what? Just trying to be helpful? You still aren't telling me something.
What possible reason would I have to?
Tell me, right now.
Medusa learned that Calliope was going to the reliquary because I told her. Now, before you say anything, I had no idea of the fate awaiting our dear muse. And you yourself said Medusa was not responsible. I simply had to know if I'd inadvertently, rather innocently...
Sold her out? She came to you for help, and you gave her whereabouts to the highest bidder.
I am trying to help, Grace. In my way.
What do you mean, in my way? What way is that?
The voice acting just kills me.
The way where I don't take all the blame.
What else will I discover, Pan? I'd rather learn it now than later.
I wish I could tell you, Grace. I truly do.
I'm not as angry at him as Grace is, but I think that's actually a pretty reasonable anger for her to have. I do think at this point I should talk to Persephone before proceeding.
Back again so soon, Grace? You're practically a regular at the club.
So
Did you
soon.
end up finding Medusa?
Jeez.
Or did she vanish the moment you came near, like she does with every other idol?
She definitely did not vanish. Maybe I better explain what happened.
So Medusa vanishes when other idols
never
come
should have
near,
brought that
probably
monster
because
to
of
the
the
new
hunger,
world.
the addiction.
Athena's a fool to think Medusa can be controlled. You're fortunate to have made it out in one piece. It could have gone very poorly for you.
I know, but let's focus on the important part of the story.
Which is that if you believe what she says, Medusa appears to be exonerated.
And that brings us back to Pan.
I don't imagine you've confronted him yet.
Actually,
He admitted to selling out Calliope, but not to killing her. I don't know if I can believe him.
Nor I. Pan would do anything to save his own skin. Allow me some time to consider our next move. On a different
Persephone's thrown
matter,
in with
I've
us
had
for
time to
real.
do some thinking.
That's nice.
After Aphrodite's party, we never really spoke about the Eidolon and Calliope's memories. No doubt you have many questions.
Apollo told me a little about it. He did say I should talk to you, though.
Did he now? Is there anything you'd like to ask?
How many times have you died? Can I ask that?
We call it passing on. I've lost track of just how many times I've passed on my Eidolon. A dozen? It's happened less often in more recent eras.
So
And the
of my
one you
friends
told me
noted
about,
that
the woman
gold is
married to
very
that
much
gangster?
the
She was the most recent?
I don't think of chastity as
godly
a she.
marker
That was
in
me.
this game.
Just
And
as the one
Persephone
my husband
was
blasted with a
wearing
shotgun was also
gold
me.
jewelry, and so
It was one of the
does-
few
so does
times I wasn't
Athena,
able
so
to
does
prepare my
Apollo.
successor.
Even
We were
Eros'
friends,
little bow.
yes, but I didn't know what Persephone was, and I had no idea what I'd just become.
That must have been difficult.
It was more difficult taking over my dead husband's territory. Women weren't often mobsters in those days.
Sure they weren't. But you notice that Medusa was also draped in gold. So, I wonder. She says she's not an idol, but I wonder what that means. It's also interesting that Grace is touched in silver, as was the previous Aphrodite. I wonder if that marks them out in some way.
Were you really a gangster? I've heard it said, but it sounds...
Let me put it this way. I felt as if I'd been blessed by a dying woman who saved me from a prison of my own making. I didn't know what I was, but I was free. I felt more alive than I'd ever felt before, and strong enough to toss an ox 10 feet. Did I set out to become a mobster?
My eye keeps
Not
getting drawn to
exactly.
that scarf of
My
leaves.
husband's
I kind of
friends
want
thought I'd
one.
murdered him, however, so they came after me. And one thing led to another.
Oh, I see.
Athena found me just as my memories were starting to return. I wasn't permitted to continue doing something so noticeable, so I was carted off to Olympus. It's too bad, really. I was an excellent
I
monster.
believe that.
When all these memories start to return, will I feel different?
First, you'll have dreams. Places you've never been, people you've never met. But unlike with normal dreams, these will linger. Then they will come while you're awake. Sudden flashes or snippets of déjà vu. And sometimes it will seem so real you'll swear you're hallucinating. If there's anything difficult about the process, is that it becomes hard to differentiate between your life and all these other lives you're now recalling.
It does sound confusing.
Confusing and
I
often
wonder if Medusa
unpleasant,
is passed on the same way
as not all
or
the
not.
memories will be fond ones.
She says that she's not
But that
an
will
idol.
pass in time.
You said it becomes hard to differentiate your life from the others. How hard, exactly? It'll still be me, right?
Oh, how do I explain this? Grace, would you say that you are who you are because of your experiences? The things you've lived and done?
I guess so, sure.
Well, all the things Calliope has done, and those before her, will now be yours. They will feel like a part of your life as well. Thus, they can't help but shape you. The Grace that is now will be and will have done so much more. Fortunately, you don't have to deal with every memory. Each time the Eidolon passes on, the oldest memories fade, and that helps.
I don't feel like Grace
Wait,
really needs to
how
ask
is
this
it
question,
good
but
that
I'm
old
curious about what
memories
she'll
start to
say.
fade?
Think of how old we are, Grace. If all those memories returned to you with perfect clarity, they would destroy you.
Yeah, but doesn't that mean you've all forgotten so much?
Well, far
Sure.
more than we remember. The further I think back, the more it becomes a bit of a blur, actually. You'll recall important moments. Some will be mixed up with the stories mortals tell, and you won't be sure which is the memory and which is the story. An idol's memory is a series of islands in a dark ocean, and they become smaller and smaller as they recede into the horizon. It sounds dire, but you become accustomed to it. It just takes time. And now you have all the time in the world.
It's really interesting to grapple with the idea of immortality. It's obviously been a favorite topic of people talking about why we die forever. You know, the Greeks talked about it being possible if you just ate and drank the right substances to become eternally youthful and eternally persistent. Ambrosia, brothos meaning mortal, and am being the negative suffix. So not mortal. And nectar, the drink of the gods. So the food and drink of the gods are what make them immortal, what make them the gods. But does that mean that they could die? Does that mean that mortals could live forever? What does it mean for a mortal to enter the underworld and return? There are dozens of stories of heroes doing just that. It's called katabasis. The kata is down, among other things, but down, and basis means step. It comes from the word to walk. So a going down into the underworld and returning. So you have this with Heracles, twice actually. You have this with Odysseus, who only touches the shore of the underworld, barely goes at all in, and it's still a feat worthy of only the greatest of heroes. You have this with Theseus, with Orpheus. So you have, and with Persephone herself. Persephone herself is the original katabasis, right? She is ripped from the heavens, well, she's ripped from the earth down into the underworld as a goddess. And when you go into the underworld, that means you are dead. in a lot of ways. And then she comes back, and that's the cycle of the seasons myth. If we don't talk about Adonis, which again is the same kind of thing, right? Is somebody dying and coming back, as the cycle of the seasons. The plants dying and coming back. Persephone with the spring flowers winding up her sleeves, even as she is the queen of the underworld. Apparently in both senses. So this question of what immortality does to you is a very interesting one that has its roots very, very far back. And it's not just in Greek mythology, although that's what I'm talking about here. You find myths of immortality in Chinese lore, in, all sorts of places. The Hindu and Buddhist idea of reincarnation, like all over the place. And so, how much do you remember? How much does the Dalai Lama, who is supposed to remember all of his past lives, how much does that immortality change him? These are not abstract questions necessarily, especially that last one, which I would not even begin to want to talk about because that's a real person who lives in the world. But supposing that somebody could be truly immortal, would you want all of your memories forever? Would you imagine that, your first 100 years or so become as your first 2 years or so, where you don't remember anything, that happened? We forget more than we remember, just generally. And even what we remember is, as Persephone was saying, subject to storytelling. It's subject to the stories you tell yourself about it, how you remember it. So, it's an interesting question. If these idols keep going on and on and on, what does that mean, and why do they do it?
Wait, you said that Persephone passed on her eidolon as she lay dying. What if she had just died?
The eidolon will keep us alive for a time, even in the most horrific circumstances, in hopes that there's someone to pass it on to.
What if there isn't? What if Chastity had died before you were shot?
Then the line of Persephone would have ended then and there. Oh, there are some stories that say an eidolon will go wandering, that it never really dies. And who knows if there's any truth to that. It's not exactly something we've had the opportunity to study. All we know is that many idols have left us forever. They've died, and that's how it happens.
It's a lot to consider. Assuming I'll even have time to worry about it, what with the trial coming.
Either the trial will end poorly, in which case all of this is moot, or it will end well, and you will have plenty of time to digest.
Yeah.
Fatalistic, but
Thanks for the update.
I'm a realist, Grace. It's what I'm best at. Now then, unless you've something else to ask.
Some touchy subjects here. We have not heard a dang thing about Hades. It is kind of fun that we have Persephone and not Hades, of course, because there are some suspicions that Persephone is a much older goddess than Hades is a god, that Hades used to refer primarily simply to the underworld and then became a personification of it for Persephone to marry. I'm not 100% sure if I believe that or not, but it's certainly intriguing. Certainly we hear Persephone's name as a goddess in the texts earlier than we hear Hades as a person. But that doesn't... It's called argument ex silentio, when we just don't have the evidence. We can't say for sure. Let's start with something a little less touchy than Hades.
Tell me more about Calliope. You and her were good friends, right?
We were.
And
if you had told me a decade ago that I would become close to one of the muses, I would have laughed in your face. I always considered them Apollo's creatures. Calliope,
Apollo's
Cleo, and
creatures.
Thalia. Vapid, frivolous gods who handed off their
Calliope,
idol on
Cleo,
to
and
any artist who
Thalia.
took their fancy. Every time I met
Interesting.
one of them, they were someone else. Apollo called them the Sisters of Beauty, no matter their gender. Can you imagine that? It's such a stupid name.
I never thought of that. Do idols change gender a lot?
Well, we tend to seek out successors like ourselves, but it happens. With the Muses, it happened frequently. Everywhere Apollo went, they surrounded him like a gaggle of ducklings, just like him to gather his own fans.
So the Muses traditionally live on Mount Parnassus, which is sacred to Apollo. So that makes a lot of sense. So in this game, we have learned that there are canonically 3 Muses, as opposed to the 9 that we usually think of. This, this is totally normal within how we think about the Muses historically. Sometimes there were 3, sometimes there were 6, sometimes there were 9. I think I even saw once 8. So here we have them named, Cleo, Calliope, and Thalia. Thalia also was the name of one of the Graces. It means blooming. Cleo, I want to say, is the muse of history, and Thalia, well, I don't recall right now. It might have been drama, it might have been tragedy specifically. I can't quite remember. But all of those categorizations were codified by the Alexandrians, the library. So that's, in the 200s, that's not, necessarily the origin of the myth or true for everybody who believed in the Muses or talked about the Muses, or sang about the Muses, because typically the gift of the Muses was in song of some form. Not always, obviously. There's Terpsichore, the muse of dance, if you trust the Alexandrian version of it, which I'm sure was true for some. So I really wonder what happened to the other 2, if their idols didn't pass on.
If you disliked the Muses so much, how did you end up becoming friends with Calliope?
She sought me out. She'd become more and more unhappy on Olympus, so she decided to leave just as I had, long before. Calliope asked for my help, and I laughed in her face. Go ask one of your sycophant mortals, I told her. I mean, surely one of them has some threadbare couch you can sleep on.
Or Apollo's
Wow.
dump.
Typically, she was undeterred. She didn't just want a place to stay. She said she wanted to learn how to be truly independent from an idol who had mastered it. What can I say? I am a sucker for a well-timed compliment.
Persephone is not as hard as she likes to pretend.
Apollo was furious. He and Calliope were barely speaking, but he was certain she'd come crawling back to Olympus.
I wonder if that means that it's
Made
before
taking her
Apollo
in all
left.
the sweeter.
So, when they talk about the sycophantic mortals, muses, regardless of which version we're talking about, are the sources of inspiration for mortal arts. And that we really do see in the poetry that we've been graced with, that has survived. The beginning of almost every major work begins with an invocation of the Muses. The Iliad and the Odyssey, obviously. Sing, O Muse, of the wrath of Achilles, son of Peleades, son of Peleus, or sing, O Muse of a complicated man. Yes, I'm using the Wilson translation, and yes, I'm very excited for her Iliad, and I should get a copy. There's so many exciting classics books that just came out. I cannot tell you. There's one by Sarah Derbew, Untangling Blackness in the classics, and I want it so bad. My library is already stuffed. I mean, you see that in most of my videos, so, you know. We'll see. See if I get there. But I'm very excited for it. Anyway, point being that kind of inspiration, that's why they're associated with Apollo, is revelation and inspiration going together. Functionally, I mean, that's why. And it's not at all surprising that muses have the ability to inspire trust and friendship when they want to. Another thing I wanted to touch on was where she said that sometimes the muses would gender hop. That it happens from time to time with a lot of people, but frequently with the muses, and that doesn't surprise me either. Not that the muses or the graces were ever depicted as men or anything other than women, but inspiration is change. And it's not at all surprising to me that some of the most creative people would be the ones most willing to experiment with the things that other people find rigid. So let's keep asking.
After you took Calliope in, that's when you became friends?
No, not right away. I wasn't looking for a friend. What I was looking for was an opening act in the club. Calliope entertained here for years, and then eventually turned from performing to attracting new acts. She was in her element.
I'll bet.
She and I, we warmed up to each other eventually. She was more capable than I expected, and I adored her furious
I'll bet you
rants.
did.
Calliope didn't seem like the furious type when I met her. That's hard to picture.
Oh, then you didn't really meet her. She was an idealist, and nobody could ever quite
Her
live
brothers
up to
and
her
sisters.
standards for very long. Her brothers and sisters, least of all.
What
The
do
idols
you mean
needed to
by
change,
that?
she said. They were withering away in the shadows, diminished and unwilling to save their own skins. When I joined the chorus, she expected me to change everything, as if I could single-handedly override Athena.
So
to
Persephone's
be her
admittance to the
champion.
chorus is new. That's
And together
interesting.
we would bring revolution to the idols. Well, I was yet another disappointment. She left the club, but I gave her a place to live. We were supposed to stay in touch, but you know how it went from there.
What happened to the other muses? You mentioned 2 others. Were they lost in the war?
One of them was, though not like you think. The day we were to leave on the ship, Talia simply never showed up.
Do you know what happened to her?
We never heard from her again. Apollo thrashed about in mourning, but Talia had been fading away for years. It wasn't a surprise to the rest of us.
What about the other muse? Cleo.
Died long before. A victim at the hands of a mortal man, when she no longer possessed the power to
I
bedazzle
shouldn't be
him.
surprised that Persephone brings up
As I
the
understand
domestic
it, he kept her in a
violence
cage
angle.
as a pet until her eidolon shriveled up and perished. It was dead before she was.
Ugh,
Interesting.
That's pretty dark.
That the eidolons
Yes, well, we
can
come by
be
our
separated
awareness of mortals honestly, Grace.
their human embodiments. I wonder what that means they are. They're not quite souls.
I'd like to know a little more about the idols. I am one now, right?
What constitutes a little more in this instance?
Well,
Yes, I have lots of
What are we?
questions. You did offer.
where did we come from? If an idol is a soul that moves from person to person, it must have started somewhere, right?
Ah, the big question. To which the answer is, nobody knows. I remember the original Persephone only vaguely. Indeed, I'm not even certain she was the original. Was there something before her? How did she get her eidolon? I couldn't tell you. Evidently, we wrote little down in those early days, or were forbidden to, and our memories only stretch back so far. Anything beyond that simply isn't.
That's surprising.
Isn't it strange to not know where you come from?
Oh God, I hope not.
For all
Not
you know,
again.
the idols
No
could
more
be
ancient aliens,
aliens.
Aliens? Grace, you watch too many movies.
please.
Gods are okay, but aliens are just wacky fiction.
Fine, yes. It is strange. No, our earliest days aren't the only blanks in our memories, however. We have many. And the last was the day Zeus called us all together to tell us Rome had fallen and we should prepare for war. But did that war occur? I couldn't tell you.
Huh.
The last thing I remember after Rome was 1,000 years later, in the 16th century. I was in a different body, feeling as if no time at all had passed.
Interesting.
Athena calls that period the gap. That's what it feels like.
Huh.
All of us experienced it, and not one of us knows why or how.
That's interesting.
The gap you mentioned. What was that like? Did you just wake up one day, or...
I wasn't asleep. I lived. I had lives. I passed on my eidolon. I may have known who I was and what I was, but perhaps I was completely unaware. All I know is that one day, Athena came to my nunnery, near Trieste, I think. The moment that I saw her, all the old memories came flooding back. My life during the gap was wiped away in an instant, and it never returned. If someone did that to us, they were powerful indeed.
Okay.
What about Athena? I mean, she's the one who found you, right? She must have been aware.
Athena woke up on her own, or so she claims, and spent the next century rounding up those idols who remained. Zeus, however, was gone. What became of him, what happened in Rome, we've never pieced it together. It's troubling.
Tell me more about the war. It seems to have had a huge effect on all of you.
That's
The
putting
war.
it mildly.
From
She means World
Aphrodite's
War II,
song,
I think.
I know Ares betrayed everyone. What did you do?
Honestly, after my mother was murdered, I barely remember.
Your mother?
Her name was Demeter. Not truly my mother, but an idol
I guess
who
we're
had
going with the British
always cared for
pronunciation.
me since the early days. I thought we'd be together
Demeter,
forever.
Demeter.
And Ares brought those filthy bastards down on
Demeter.
us. Demeter was slain by bullets.
The mother of the
by
earth.
bullets. Until that day, I had believed we were untouchable.
Why?
Why would Ares do that? Did he get anything out of it in the end, or...
What he got was a final death. A few of us hunted him down. and made sure he
Yeah,
paid
well,
for his
I guess
betrayal.
that
Choked
was
in his own
likely
blood.
to be the response.
As for why he did it, who knows? He thought us a lost cause. He wanted glory. He wanted more than we had, living in secret. After that, I don't know. We went from hiding place to hiding place. I didn't even know what Hephaestus had done for us when I found myself on a boat. We might have been gods once, but after the war, we were just refugees, like so many others, fleeing to a distant land.
Was it hard for the idols to come to the New World? It's just a place like any other, isn't it?
Well, it wasn't the place that was hard, it was the fear. We knew we were vulnerable. We knew mortals could and would kill us. Suddenly, there were rules. We had to be secret. We had to stay close together. We huddled in the shadows and quaked each time the mortals so much
take it
as
she does not
breathed in our
approve.
direction. We couldn't all live that way. Some of us drifted away, faded into the night without so much as an explanation. That's what's been the hard part. Our inevitable decline in a place where we don't belong. We can pass on our eidolons as often as we like, but it will never truly be home.
Here we go.
Are you willing to talk about Hades? If you don't want to, that's fine. I'm just...
Incredibly curious how I ended up murdering my husband.
that, yeah.
You know, one might think that my hatred of Hades began when he kidnapped me and forced me to be his bride. But honestly, that wasn't it. I hated my brothers and sisters for letting it happen. But Hades himself terrified me. He had a presence. I mean, one that forever made him the most important man in the room. And me? Oh, I was
Her
nothing
eyes shifting
in
side to side
comparison.
like that.
When Hades began doting on
This
me,
is hard for her.
trying to earn my
Dredging
favor,
up very painful
I
memories.
swooned that he might deign to think of me that way. For centuries, I actually thought I was in love. That the kidnapping was the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's an interesting take. Managed to
funny how our
incorporate both
perspectives
of the
change.
common versions. The as far as we know, canonical. The hymn to Demeter, if we're going with that. Where she was kidnapped unwilling. And the version where she's in love with him. Where she was happy as queen of the underworld. And so that's very interesting. So, you know, before people start shouting Stockholm Syndrome, let me just... that's not a real thing, as far as I can tell. It's one of those, like, urban myths. But there is something to the honeymoon effect that she described. It's not inevitable that someone will come to see their captor as their savior. But if that person then lavishes them with care and attention, it's hard not to start to depend on them emotionally as well as physically. Especially over a long enough period of time, that cycle of abuse can feel like love. And you can truly love somebody as they hurt you. But that doesn't make it good. If there's one thing I could tell my younger self, it's that love is not enough. And it sounds like Persephone found that out too.
If you got along with Hades for so long, what changed?
I did. I grew up. I was a trophy for Hades. A conquest that he expected to remain meek and unchanging forever. He went out of his way to keep me small. I slowly realized that, he'd always been that way. Manipulation and arrogance behind the handsome sneer. We battled for centuries. I hated him, and I told him so, but he refused to part with me. He declared that I was his and would stay in the underworld where I belonged.
And that's when you killed him?
That's when I killed him, yes. The first time one idol had ever murdered another. Thank you very much.
I'm guessing the other idols weren't thrilled with you killing Hades.
Well, yeah, they didn't know what to do with me. And Athena was furious that the most powerful remaining idol had been lost. See, this was before the war and before all the new rules. The chorus had never once contemplated execution, but they certainly considered it
No wonder
then.
she was able to be swayed to
In the
our
end,
cause.
they decided it was better to humiliate me. They ensured I did not benefit from Hades' murder, and stripped the throne I had wrested from his grasp.
Which you weren't happy about.
I asked them where they were all those years while I pleaded for help. I was held captive, and what was I expected to do? What, lie down and take it forever because Hades was more useful to them alive? No.
I feel like
I stopped doing what was expected of me the day I slit his throat. May he rot
I feel
in
like
Tartarus
somebody
with
with
the
some
Titans for all
experience wrote
eternity.
this. It's hard to understand that somebody that you cared about was hurting somebody else. A lot of times, even the best of people will react to the knowledge that someone is being abused defensively. Because it shakes your worldview. There's a lot of talk about this actually right now with the whole what's his face from that 70s show? Masterson? I think that's his name. Sorry, I don't follow celebrities. But I am familiar with that backlash, that moment where all of his friends go, that couldn't be, that, like, even if it was, there must have been something else going on. He's such a good person, and this and that unrelated thing. And it's hard to hold that cognitive dissonance in your head of how good he's been to you and how bad he's been to someone else. Abusers are charming. They have to be, or they don't get away with it. It's a grieving process. And the fact that this isn't common knowledge makes it harder for people who have been abused to deal with it, because a lot of times they lose their whole friends group over losing their shackles, if they even can.
How did you go from ruling the underworld to opening a nightclub named after it?
I won it in a bet with Dionysus, god of merriment.
Okay, there has to be a story there.
Oh, that sounds good.
Well, the story is that he was a fool, but a charming one with many patrons. They built him a nightclub as his personal playground.
That sounds about right for Dionysus.
It was a grand old time for Dionysus in the 1970s, I assure you. But he didn't know how to run a business. By the time disco was ready to die, so was his stupid club.
Everything about this
So
makes total
I
sense.
offered to make it profitable. If I succeeded, he would turn ownership over to me. He accepted because, frankly, all he wanted to do was drink anyhow. I was successful.
Sex, drugs, and
The club
disco.
became mine, and I kicked Dionysus out for never paying his tab.
Sucks to be him.
Dionysus ever sobers up, he might decide to be sore about it, but so
Okay,
far,
so
that
he's
hasn't
still
happened.
around. That's good to know.
What's the deal between you and Apollo? The way you two fight.
I've told you how he and the other idols stood by and let me rot with Hades, did I not?
It seems more personal than that.
Okay, there's an old saying that no one escapes the underworld. But that's not true. I did. Once. Not long after Hades kidnapped me. I was homesick, and I missed my mother. Charon took pity on me and allowed me across the Styx. And after that, Grace, I waded through darkness itself to get out of there. Hades chased after me relentlessly, but I evaded him, right up until I got to the very slopes of Olympus. And who do you suppose was the first idol I met?
Uh-oh.
Apollo stood there. I cried out to him, begging him not to let Hades take me, and yet Apollo did as he has always done. Absolutely nothing. Hades was thrilled, and I knew then and there I could never rely on my so-called family for anything, ever again.
That's all I can think of for now. I'll see you around.
Oh yes, that's where I'll be, around.
Whew, heavy note to end that on. Alright, so it sounds like there's some conflation there of, I've noted this before, of Apollo and Helios, the god of the sun, which is not uncommon. So Apollo's chariot is the sun, but also Helios's chariot is the sun, and you know, it gets a little bit confused depending on which version you're reading. So it's not surprising then to see Apollo essentially in the role of Helios, Helios being the one who finally ratted out what had happened to Persephone and ultimately caused the compromise that happened. Not because he actively chose to, but because he was finally asked. Apollo here seems to very much embody the guy with privilege who doesn't understand how to stand up. He feels ashamed of his inability to do things, but at the same time he's convinced that all he ever does is fuck up. Because he never tries. And if you never try, you never succeed. And on that note, I think we're going to end this stream for this week. I hope that was enjoyable. I certainly really liked the Medusa part, and that conversation with Persephone was very enlightening. And darkening? Right, so much love to you all. Thank you for joining me, and thank you for watching. And I will be back this time next week with another play of Stray Gods. Keep learning, friends.